Hello, I'm Jamie from ESL Teacher 365, and today I'm going to be sharing my experience as an online teacher on the platform Outschool. If you aren't an Outschool teacher yet, this will be helpful for you. If you are an Outschool teacher, I'll be sharing a lot of tips for increasing your enrollments and general tips and tricks. And if you don't want to teach on Outschool, but you want to teach online in general, I will still be sharing a lot of information that can be helpful for you. So I would love to know where you're watching this video from, either live or catching up on the replay. So leave me a comment where you're watching from in the world. I'm currently in near Brisbane, Australia, but I am originally from Wisconsin in the United States. Well, let's get into everything right away. So, what is Outschool? You may have heard of this, you may not. This is a marketplace where teachers can list their classes and teach ages 3 through 18. You don't need to teach all ages, you can be very specific. I teach ages 4 through 8, and occasionally I will allow 3-year-olds as well if they're a sibling. And you can choose to teach any subject, almost any subject that you would like. On this platform, there's not only English classes and math and science, but I teach dance on the platform. There is music classes. It's really up to you and what you would like to offer, what your passion is, what your expertise is in. To give you a general idea of marketplaces versus online companies, online companies are typically to teach ESL, and they usually provide the materials. They may help you get your students, but Outschool and other teaching marketplaces, you need to create your lessons, look for materials, or create your own materials. They do usually help you with a bit of your marketing, but you can always do your own marketing, and we'll talk about that later on. But it is a little bit different. And another big difference is for online ESL companies, you're paid per hour, whereas on Outschool, you are paid per student. Outschool does take a 30% commission of everything that you make, but they do allow you to use their Zoom, their messaging platform. They do some marketing for you. So that's where that 30% goes. But it's up to you to think if that is worth it or not. I will be sharing some of my stats, how much I've made on Outschool, and how this can be a lot more lucrative than teaching for online ESL companies, especially since a lot of them are only paying around 10 to 15 US dollars per hour. And then you need to take out your own tax and everything on top of that. So that's just a little general overview of Outschool and online marketplaces in general. Some other marketplaces are things like Preply or italki. There's a lot of different ones out there. So some of my Outschool stats. I started teaching on Outschool in 2021. I was hired in 2020, but I'm in Australia and my background check took like a few months to clear. There is a requirement that you have to be living in specific countries that have the background check to teach on Outschool. So it's not about native, non-native speaker. It's more about where you're living and if you can pass their background check. But I have been teaching on there since 2021. And I have taught 1,095 students. That's a lot of students. And I started out teaching something completely different than what I teach now. And I'll tell you about that. I've taught 592.2 hours, and I've made $56,662. That averages around to 95 US dollars an hour. So for online teaching, that is pretty crazy. Obviously, when I started out, I had lower enrollments, I had lower prices for my classes, and I have increased my prices, and I will give you some tips on how to do that. But it just goes to show that online teaching can be a really good option if you're wanting a job to work from home. In terms of popular classes, this has really changed from my time starting on Outschool to now. I started out in 2021 when one-time classes were very popular. That was, of course, during when everyone was at home, and I'm sure that families were looking for just quick classes that their kids could do. So I taught a lot of one-time 30-minute ballet classes with themes. So I had like mermaid ballet, unicorn ballet, and then some stories and things like that. And those were a big hit. But as people transition to kind of getting back into everything, getting back into school and normalcy, I found that my ongoing classes were performing a lot better than my one times. So for a one time class, maybe I would meet those students, but then never see them again. But for my ongoing classes, those are weekly classes. So the families sign up, they meet you once a week, and they have a subscription. So it's very easy for them to continue with you. And I've had some students over 2 years with me taking classes with me every single week, which has been fantastic. But it just goes to show that what is working in 1 year or at one point in time may not work later on. As an online teacher, you need to be willing to shift and try out different things. Outschool recently changed up their self-paced classes, and so I am interested in testing that out as well. But if you have different ways to teach, try them out and see what works. In terms of some more stats, I have 5.0 stars out of 5 and 285 family reviews. And again, that takes time to build up, but it's really helpful for when people are looking at your profile, deciding if they should go with you or with a different teacher, to have those positive reviews. I have never personally asked my families for reviews. I know that some educators do that. They'll send a message after the class and say, please, write me a review if you enjoyed this class and everything. I never personally have done that. What I do instead is after the first time I meet a student, I will thank them. I will say, I hope you enjoyed class with me. It was fantastic dancing with you. Maybe mention something that they did well. In my case, I teach ballet. So, oh, I really liked your creative turns that you did or whatever. And I find that that kind of is a nice way to connect with your families, show them that you are paying attention, use their name in the message. And Outschool does prompt them to leave a review. I'm not exactly sure when it is, but I'm not initiating that. It's coming from Outschool. Another thing that I have done after teaching over 1,000 students is I've reached something called Star Educator status. There are a few different badges that you can earn on Outschool, and it depends on your reviews, how many positive reviews you have, how quickly you respond to families' messages, and how many students you have taught within a time frame. I believe it's over 100 students in the past 6 months, something like that. So this badge from each month, I may lose it, I may have it, just depending on if I have hit those milestones. And they are, of course, going to push those teachers that have these badges a little bit more. So that does help in terms of marketing. So that's just a little bit of an overview of Outschool Stats and how it works. Okay, now let's get into the good stuff. So how I increase my enrollments, and this is for Outschool, but I'll be sharing general tips for teaching online as well. And if you have any questions as we go through, just leave them in the comments and I will always get back to you and answer those for you. So how I increase my enrollments, I started with a lot of trial and error. As I mentioned before, I started out teaching something completely different on Outschool. I did my application for pre-reading literacy skills classes. And I did like a letter treasure hunt class that was pirate themed. And I actually taught some of those classes. But then I realized, I think I could figure out how to teach dance on this platform. And I am a certified teacher. I do come from a background of teaching preschool and first grade. So I would have liked to teach literacy classes. That wasn't the issue. But I started really enjoying teaching ballet and beginner dance. And I also saw that there was a lot of demand for it. Obviously, a lot of the dance studios were closed down. And so people were looking for options for their kids. But even now, when studios are open, it is nice because families aren't commuting to the dance studio. They can quickly put on the lesson for their child. It's just 30 minutes. And I even have some parents are off doing their own workout while I'm with their kid and everything. So it's a good option for families. But how I started out was those one-time classes, starting out with a lot of trial and error, trying out different times and different lengths of classes. Eventually, I have decided my one times are a little bit better if they're about 25 minutes, just because sometimes the enrollments are lower, whereas my weekly classes, I do 30 minutes, but I also do some show and tell at the end. So they end up being about 40 minutes or a little bit longer than that. It depends. But I started out with those one-time classes, and I'm in Australia, and Outschool serves mostly homeschoolers in the US. So I had to think a bit about my time zone, but it does also have international learners. So for a while, I was doing classes for US times and then for Asian times as well. And I was also on some other platforms, also teaching dance, targeting those more Asian time zones. And I did get students there, but I found that I was getting the most when I was teaching the US times. So as a teacher and essentially a business owner, you need to think about where are your students located, what times work for them, and for yourself too, which times are you wanting to teach? Are you okay with working weekends and nights? Are you looking for something in the morning? It does take some time to test everything out. So I tested out all these different classes, and some of my classes did really well. Some of them failed. This was probably due to the different themes. Things like mermaids and fairies and unicorns did really, really well. But when I had a specific story and it was a one-time class like Cinderella, it didn't do as well. But I found that if I made weekly classes that were fairy tales and different themes, that those did pretty well. And I'm back. Yeah, my camera decided, or my entire computer decided to die. So we're back. Thank you for your patience while I just get set up. Okay. All right. Technology and online teaching, always fun. Okay, here we go. Let's see, where was I? Okay, increasing enrollment. He's checking it out. I have my husband is an IT guy, and he's checking it out for me. Thank you. Always exciting on live streams. Okay, here we go. All right. So the idea is to test everything out, some trial and error. So try different things. Obviously, I am a dance teacher, but this could pertain to any sort of niche that you're in. Say that you're an ESL teacher and maybe try some pronunciation classes and try some grammar classes, some speaking classes. Just test it out and see what is working for you, what's booking well, what times are booking well. If you find that a certain region is easier to target than another, it's really just up to trying many different things. If you are interested in teaching on Outschool, I do recommend that once you have your class set up, you need to open at least 3 sections of each class. This is because it gives the algorithm a little bit more information, and it can show it to families because you don't just offer this one time on one date. You have several different options. So try and open a lot of different slots like that. What you want to do eventually to increase your enrollments, either on Outschool or as an online teacher in general, is create something like a funnel or a staircase of classes. You can think about it. What you have is one class that leads into another, that leads into another, that leads into another. My funnel was taking my one-time classes and funneling them into my weekly classes. So if someone took my one-time class, I would send them a message and let them know that I also offer weekly classes. So if they enjoyed their time with me, they could meet with me every week in an ongoing class. I also had this in my class description for the one-time classes. I let them know not only do I have other one-time classes, but I also have this weekly class that they can filter into. So if you offer different things, let your students know. They won't be able to book it if they aren't aware of it. So sending messages to families or to students or putting this in your class description, on your profile, these are places to help bring them into that. On a lot of the online teaching marketplaces, you aren't allowed to email your students directly, to share your personal email, your personal website, any of that stuff, because they want to keep you on those marketplaces, on those platforms. But a lot of these platforms have messaging systems, so you can message a link to your class as long as it's on that same platform. So do take advantage of those messaging systems. Another way to increase your enrollments is to add value to your classes. And I will get into this to give you some ideas a little bit later, but that helps. If you are offering more value than another teacher offering something similar, those families are more likely to choose you. Also, something that people don't normally think about, but make sure that your profile is complete. If you are able to have a video as part of your class description, or there's some information to fill out, really take the time and fill that out. If you have a way to upload an image for your classes, make it something that's attractive to your ideal students. So my students are between 3 and 8 years old, and they want to do beginning dance classes. So I do use a lot of bright colors and some pictures of ballet or the themes that we're doing, but I also have a picture of myself. I want my students to connect with me, to start feeling comfortable with me right away. And I also have a video for my students and families to get to know me a little bit. I show some clips of what the class is like. So I will do a talking head video kind of like this, but then have a little clip of the dance class so they can see what it's like taking a dance class in my living room. And yeah, you just want to really attract your students and think about what they're looking for and how you can best present it to them. Another way to increase your enrollments is the customer experience. You want to have a really good, positive experience with your families. And I have found that, for example, if a family reaches out to me and they're asking about a sibling discount, or maybe they know that they're going to be missing a class, I offer to give them the recording. You just want to go above and beyond for your customers. And while you may be losing out on some money initially, for example, if by giving a student a sibling discount, in the long run, those families are going to stay with you a really long time, and you essentially have two enrolled instead of one. So it can be really worth it to occasionally give discounts or refunds if something happens. Of course, it's up to you. It's your business. A lot of these marketplaces are very hands-off, and you get to make all these decisions. But I do recommend always messaging the families, always including the name of the student. It just helps them feel like they are seen and that you really understand their student. Or if they're the student themselves, of course, it's nice to see your name and everything. Let's see. Yeah, I think I've gone over a lot of tips for enrollments. for Outschool. In general, for online teaching, let me think a little bit. Yeah, it's going to be the same trial and error. So try different time slots, have really good customer service, be messaging students if they're needing help with something specific, go kind of above and beyond to find some resources for them, communicate really well with them and promptly. But let's go over some different ideas so that you can give a little bit of value so you can charge more. And I haven't talked about my prices yet, so I'll talk a little bit about that. I started out with my classes being $8 for 30 minutes, and this is per student. On marketplaces, you get to charge per student. It's not hourly pay. So if you're teaching a very large class, that can be very, very lucrative. And I slowly increased my rates. And so now I am at 15 US dollars for 30 minutes of a class per student. And for example, on Monday, one of my classes has 10 students in it. And of course, I have some classes that are packed and other ones that maybe I've opened up recently, so they're starting to grow. I do also allow my students to move different classes. So if they have a conflict that week and they want a transfer, I can always transfer them to a different class. But yeah, it takes time to build up, but don't be afraid to raise your prices, especially if you're offering something quite unique. If you're doing something that no one else is doing and you find that people are booking it, try raising your prices. I know that a lot of teachers are scared to raise their prices. They think that they will lose students, but I've actually found that when I raise my prices, I get more students. I think the biggest jump was from charging maybe $10 or $11 per class to 13 and 14. And for me, I felt like that was so expensive and so crazy for a while, but now I'm charging 15 and I have a lot of bookings. So just try it out. Of course, you can always lower your prices if you aren't getting booked, but it is worth trying it out and raising your prices. So ways to add value. What I do is I offer a coloring sheet for my students. And after each lesson, I write a little summary of what we did, what dance moves we worked on, a little bit about the story that we did. And then I have created coloring sheets using Canva Pro because you can use it for commercial use. That's important if you're creating your own materials. And I send these messages in the classroom. You can send like a message to kind of everyone, and I attach that coloring sheet. So something quite simple. I just had to make these worksheets once, but it sets me apart from other dance teachers that maybe after the classes they don't message and they don't send anything extra. And it's just a nice way to add a little bit more value. Other ideas could be offering personalized feedback. If you are a language teacher, maybe you have your student work on some writing in your class or outside of class, and you can offer some feedback on that writing. That is something additional. You're not doing that during the class time, maybe. And so you're taking your time outside of class to read over everything, to give them some feedback and charge more for that. That is your time and you should be paid for that. Also, you can create different quizzes and send those to your students. It could be for something that they can use that to review what you did in class. And again, you can make it once and then just keep sending out that link. So some websites where you can do this are Kahoot, Quizzes, Quizlet, and WordWall. I recently made a short video on WordWall. That's a really good one to use. On marketplaces like this, like Outschool, you aren't allowed to contact your students outside of the platform. But if you have your own freelancing business or you are able to meet those students outside of your platform, you could form a chat group. So I did this for in-person teaching, not necessarily online, but that was another way to add value for my students. I would give them little challenges to do. I would share listening activities or links or something related to what we were working on.
and they could talk to each other. We made the rule that was only speaking in English in that group, but it just adds something a little bit extra. And again, it's time that you are spending, so charge more for that. You could also offer recorded content if you wanted to record a little mini lesson, and you can offer that to your students. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. You can use Zoom to record it. You could record it on your phone. You just need some place to upload the link. And if you're just starting out, you can use something like Google Drive to host these videos and then just share the link with your students. But if you're wanting to charge more for this and eventually move into freelancing, then I recommend using something where everything is uploaded there. It could be like Teachable, Thinkific. I use Kajabi. That's where I host a lot of my videos for my students. Could also be something like lists of resources that you share with your students, or little cheat sheets or checklists or guides, any of these things that you spend your time creating that you're giving your students that are individualized and they can't get from other teachers, of course, because you are creating these things. So the main idea is to get creative, think of what your students want, what they're looking for, and you only are going to know this by having conversations with them, either during your classes or messaging after the class. See what they're looking for, see what they want. Let's get into how online teachers need to think like a business. It can be difficult going from being a teacher to working on a place like a marketplace, especially if you worked for online ESL companies and then you're getting into being a marketplace teacher or even a freelance teacher. And that's because suddenly you're not just showing up and teaching, you have to manage your students. You have to think of what resources you're going to use. It's not just, okay, today is lesson 1, let's get started. You have to do a bit of your own marketing, especially when you're first getting started. So it can be challenging. I recommend kind of thinking it as having 2 different jobs. You are the teacher, of course, you need to make sure that your students are reaching their goals and everything involved in teaching. But you also have this idea of having another job as a business owner and thinking about how you can attract new students, what you can do to set up your profile, all of the things that we talked about before. It all comes down to really understanding what your students want and need. I'll give you some examples from Outschool and some examples from freelance teaching, so it's a little bit different. For Outschool, I'm targeting beginning ballet students for kids, right? It needs to be fun, it needs to be interactive, it needs to be related to things that they're interested in and the stories they like, the characters they like. My students come to my classes dressed up in their princess outfits. They love being able to do that and have that time of the week where we can all dance together. They like to interact with the other kids. We play a lot of different games and things like that. So everything that I do has my student in mind. In terms of maybe ESL teaching, I taught ESL to people that were adults who were preparing for the Cambridge tests. Their goal is to pass the exam, and so for that, they need to have a specific level of grammar, of vocabulary. They need to be able to read and write and speak and listen and understand the format of the test. So their needs are very specific to this specific test. And that's going to be different from someone who just wants general conversation classes. So think about what your students' goals are. Is it to have fun and dress up and dance and play games? Is it to pass an exam? Those are 2 very different things, but you can teach both groups online. So it just comes down to what your students want and need. And unfortunately, if you want to grow your business, if you want to have booked out classes, if you want to be that teacher that has all these reviews and has taught over 1,000 learners, you need to think a bit strategically as a business owner and not just a teacher. You can't just keep doing the same thing over and over. You need to innovate, you need to try new things and educate yourself. I've done a lot of different courses on marketing, on online teaching, and that has helped me become more confident, but also try new things in my business. There's a lot of different PD out there to help teachers, and more companies are seeing that people need help with all this kind of business aspect of teaching too, and um, getting started with that. How online teaching has changed. It's been interesting. In August 2021, there was a big change of laws in China. So a lot of the big online ESL companies had to close down or had to pivot. So it was very much before that people could work for places like VIP Kid or Magic Ears, and just kind of show up and teach and make a good salary, like over 20 US dollars a month, especially if you were living in a place like Southeast Asia and traveling. It was very easy to do and no issues. But after this law change, a lot of the companies started lowering their prices, and there were too many teachers, not enough students. And so some of these marketplaces have also become quite saturated, and you'll find that it's difficult to get started as a new teacher on these platforms. It does take a lot of planning if you're wanting to get started. So this is why I recommend either starting with online companies or marketplaces, but also growing your own freelance business on the side at the same time. You never know what's going to happen if these companies or marketplaces are going to close down. I was on another marketplace called Allschool for a while, and I was having a lot of success with Asian market students. But those numbers, the enrollments went down a lot. So I basically don't teach for them anymore, and I've found other opportunities in other places. You need to have a few different options because, especially if you're relying on a different company or marketplace, things could change. And this has even happened on Outschool. With one-on-one classes, I've only ever taught one. I had one student who wanted to do one-on-one classes, but I know that they made some changes of how the booking system works, and it's been very frustrating for teachers. They're having a lot of issues with creating their schedules, and it used to be a lot easier, and now it's a bit challenging. So that can really change what you're doing. If you're having a lot of success as a one-on-one teacher and then suddenly it's really difficult to schedule everything, you're going to be having frustrated families, you're frustrated, people aren't able to book you, there's problems. Things can change kind of at any time. So I do suggest, if you're wanting to teach online in the long term, to start building your own business on the side. Even if you just start out small, it is worth it because that is the only thing that you truly own. And it can also give you a lot of freedom. If you're a freelance teacher, this can help qualify you for things like digital nomad visas. And it's great. I recently had a surgery and I had to take some time off, and that's always challenging if you're working for a company, because they can be very strict on different requirements. But on Outschool, luckily, I have a good relationship with a lot of my families. I let them know exactly what was happening, and that classes, I just wouldn't be holding them while I was recovering and everything. But if you have your own online business, of course, you can do the same. You just let your families know and students know when you need to take that time off. So if you are interested in starting as an online teacher, you're brand new, you have no idea how to get started, how to teach online, all the different options, I do have an online mini course called Teach Online in 10 Days. The link for this is in the video description, but that's a great place to start. I created this course because I love testing out TEFL courses, and I found that almost every single TEFL course has a very small bit about teaching online, and they kind of give you an idea, but they don't talk about the logistics of like how to actually do it, what equipment you need, where to find these jobs, what it's like to create your intro or demo video. So I have created this course that walks you through everything, and you can think of it as a companion to a TEFL course. It's going to be more specific to online teaching. And if you're interested in freelance teaching, then I would say send me an email, jamie@eslteacher365.com. I have a few different things I'm working on specifically for marketing and for freelance teachers. I also have the freelance teaching workshop that I do every few months. So get on the wait list for that. Just send me an email, let me know you want to freelance, and I can send you all of that info. All right, let's get into a bit of Q&A. I'll see if we have any questions here. So it could be about online teaching in general. It could be about Outschool, anything that you would like to know. Just leave me a comment if you're able to. And we'll see what you have. And I'm just going to check my notes too to see if I forgot anything. Don't think so. So if you have a comment and you're watching live, you can leave me a comment, or if you're catching up on the replay, you can also leave me a comment and I will write back to you. Okay. Well, I hope that this was a helpful video for you today. If you'd like to learn more about online teaching, I have several different videos on my online teaching playlist. And of course, I also talk about teaching abroad. So if you're interested in both topics, I recommend checking out my YouTube channel and seeing if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching today. And if you are a Star Wars fan, it's already May the 4th in Australia. So happy Star Wars Day to everyone that celebrates. And I will see you on our next live. Bye.